Hello, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Adam Asher, and this is The Edge of Adventure as we head today to Central Africa and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the second largest nation in Africa, right in the center of the continent. And that's where the Global Orphan Foundation does their work to care for children and communities in desperate need. Rachel Tanner will be joining me today from this remarkable organization as she shares insight into what they do and how they do all of it under rather difficult circumstances. It's not an easy place to get to. It's not inexpensive to work there, but the team at the Global Orphan Foundation and those who support them financially decided long ago that something had to be done to help the ones that others had forgotten. So today, it's their story as we feature the Global Orphan Foundation and the work they do in the Congo, among other places. That's right here, today, on the Edge of Adventure podcast and radio show. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Edge of Adventure. My name is Adam Asher. Great to have you with us. As today we have a very special guest. Rachel Tanner is joining us today from the Global Orphan Foundation. We're going to get to know her, get to know them, the wonderful work they do, and the wonderful places they do this work in. So let's start by welcoming Rachel Tanner to today's program.
Thank you, Adam. It's so good to be here.
Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for what you do. You know, on this show, we really do our best to talk to the best, to reach out and get wonderful organizations on the show that are doing things that matter, that are serving perhaps in places that are forgotten by a lot of people, sort of the remote, forgotten corners of the globe. For those who haven't heard about the Global Orphan Foundation, we would love to just start with an overview. Give us a picture into your heart and the soul of the organization.
Yeah, well, I wish I could take all of the credit for Global Orphan Foundation and how great our programs are. But we were started by an adoption attorney in Indianapolis, Indiana. And we were started primarily because she would go over to the Democratic Republic of Congo and a bunch of other countries and go into orphanages to facilitate adoptions. And she would see just poverty and things that are just so heart-wrenching that she wanted to do something, and she knew that she could. And as she came back to the States and would tell people about her experience, they'd want to help. They'd want to send things over or give her funds to help make things better there next time she went. And so as that kept happening, our 501c3 status was developed. So our first program was in orphanages. We would partner with existing orphanages to really help make sure that children weren't dying of malnutrition, because one in 5 kids under the age of 7 at that point was dying of malnutrition. And, you know, it's to the point that right now nearly half of all children under the age of 5 in DRC suffers from chronic malnutrition or stunted growth. And that's across all types of children in traditional family homes, as well as orphanages. So that's what we were trying to impact first. And then as we got into that work, we noticed that nutrition alone wasn't enough without addressing clean water or sanitation or love and care. We were falling short. While the kids were not dying of malnutrition, we knew we wanted to do more. And that's where the vision for Balingo Village came from. And Balingo Village is our main program in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And it is where we take kids that either haven't been in the foster system or the orphanage system yet, but they've been abandoned, or kids that were in foster care and then had to leave. We take those kids and we give them a home and a family. So we are technically licensed as an orphanage, but we employ widowed women as foster moms. And then we give them a house on our land and give them a family to care for. And then these kids have brothers and sisters, but they have their own space. For the first time, a lot of them have their own beds. They have toys to play with. There's a community center, a clinic. We have farm operations, both traditional crops, chickens. We're also farming palm weevil larvae, which is an insect that is highly sought after in the area. And they just get to exist on a level playing field, is what I like to say. So we take kids that were disadvantaged and we give them what every kid in the country starts with.
My guest today here on The Edge of Adventure is Rachel Tanner. She's the U.S. Director for Global Orphan Foundation. We're learning today about the remarkable organization, the things they do around the world. And also, as we go through the program, we'll learn more about why they do what they do, because that's always, I like to get to that, get to the bottom line of why people would care so much about other people. I think that's fascinating and an important piece to always get to. So, Rachel, as I think about the first thing I would want to know, right, is what is life like? And I know you work in more than one country, but let's talk about the Democratic Republic of Congo. And by the way, it's, if you were to look at that country and look at it on a map, you would see it basically in the heart of Africa. I mean, it is very much Central Africa. But tell us, what is life like there? Let's talk about it just in terms of culture, and then what life is like for the precious kids that find themselves as orphans in a place like that.
Yeah, well, the first thing that a lot of people don't realize is that just in terms of infrastructure, it's so different. My mom was very concerned about my first trip over there because of the Ebola outbreak a couple of years ago. And I had to explain that in order for me to get from where we function by the capital city of Kinshasa over to the area that the outbreak was, even though in terms of it would be like traveling the distance from, Indiana to Texas, but with no highways. There's no direct path anywhere. There aren't main roads really. And so you have to actually go around the country in order to get from one side to the next. And so that is a huge difference in and of itself in terms of just getting from place to place or getting goods or services. The other thing to really note is that a lot of people think that a country like DRC, it's going to be inexpensive to get goods and food and things like that. And it's actually really not. In terms of a family, their average family income for a year is under $500, but that's not reflected in the cost of goods. So the buying power is much less. So it would be like making an average income in the US of around $55,000 a year, but a loaf of bread is over $5,000. It's craziness. So it's expensive to work there. And that's one of the reasons that we do work there, because due to those facts, there aren't as many nonprofits trying to help meet those needs as there are in other countries. So it's hard to work there, but we think it's absolutely worth it. In terms of what kids are experiencing, 33 million people living in DRC have no access to clean drinking water. And so it's just in the most remote parts, it's very, very hard to survive. And it's hard to survive even in the city center, the capital city of Kinshasa. It has a population density of over double of that of New York. So it's just where there are people, they're packed really close together. And so things like the Ebola outbreak, or there's a huge measles outbreak there right now, it just gets bad really quickly and it's hard to get under control.
Great to have Rachel Tanner with us today here on the Edge of Adventure podcast. My name is Adam Asher, and appreciate everybody joining us today and being here as we get to know the Global Orphan Foundation. So, you guys started, I know you have been with the organization, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 years. How far back does the organization go?
We were founded in 2007.
All right, so 2007. So right now, what's that, 13 years?
Mhm.
And 13 years of doing this fantastic work. And I want to dig into that a little bit more, Rachel. Here's what we're going to do. And for those of you who are listening to the podcast or watching the video version of the podcast, I got great news for you. It's now a radio show too. So consequently, we're going to do what they like to do in radio, which is take a break, and then we'll come right back. But when we do, on the other side of the break, I want to dig into what the organization does, the Global Orphan Foundation, what they do. Let's get into the specifics a little bit, figure out some of the challenges they face, why they do what they do, and so on and so forth, because they're making a big difference for all kinds of people, but in particular for precious orphans in various places around the globe. So again, my guest today, Rachel Tanner from the Global Orphan Foundation. She's my guest. We'll be right back in just a minute. This is The Edge of Adventure. Welcome back, everybody. Of course, it's great to have you with us. You know, it's really a privilege and a pleasure to have this chance to share this time with you. My name is Adam Asher, and this is The Edge of Adventure. If you'd like to find out more information about me, about this platform, this thing we call The Edge of Adventure, what's it about? He keeps talking about adventure and purpose, and I got to find out more. Well, we hope you do. We would love that. So just check us out at theedgeofadventure.com. That's theedgeofadventure.com. You'll find out more, and you'll get to know us and why we do what we do. And we appreciate all of you sharing in this, because it's a family. I mean, it's more than a group of followers online or anything like that. It's a group of people around the world that care very deeply for other people, and it's just an awesome thing to see. So today we're talking with one of those people, Rachel Tanner, who cares about other people, and we'll get to know her heart a little bit more in a few minutes. But let's talk some more about the Global Orphan Foundation. Rachel, so they're in the Democratic Republic of Congo, right?
Yes.
You mentioned earlier that you have a place called Balingo Village. What is Balingo Village?
Balingo Village. Balingo is the Lingala word for love. And Lingala is one of the languages that are spoken locally in Kinshasa area. And it is just that. We want to provide a home and love and family and connection to kids that otherwise wouldn't have that. So as we were talking about before, we have family units that live in their own houses and foster moms that are true rock stars. They take care of the kids. They are the heartbeat of Balingo Village. And they do all of the work. They do all of the work, really. They get the kids ready for school in the morning. Our village manager takes them. And then when they come back, they're there to provide help with homework and help with, any bickering between the siblings that happens. They take them to the playground that's right outside their house. They go into the farm and help select what the kids are going to eat for that day, and the farmers help them harvest it and take it back to their houses. It's just a place where kids can be kids and let the adults take care of them.
And if you're looking at the video version of this podcast, and I highly recommend that you do, check it out. You might be listening on the radio, might be checking out the audio podcast. But if you check out the video, you'll have a chance to see some of these pictures that we're sharing as we have this conversation with Rachel. It looks, you see these beautiful kids. You also see the wonderful people who have joined in this effort to help and serve others. And you see a special smile on their face too, Rachel. I think if you go through the Global Orphan Foundation, go through the photos, right, and the videos that you guys have. There's a special kind of joy when you get to serve in this way. Tell me about that joy.
Um, I tell the story of the day Balingo Village opened about a year ago, just over a year ago. And um, I was there when the kids moved in, and it was so emotional for me because we had been working towards something for so long and doing a bunch of other things at the same time. But that moment where they were all moving their stuff into their houses and you could hear them playing and laughing and being together, it was it was just probably one moment that will stick with me for the rest of my life. These kids are so resilient and they deserve everything that every other child has. And that's what Global Orphan Foundation is doing.
So how do you do that? I mean, the world is I mean, there's a lot of pain out there. There's a lot of bad situations. There's a lot of suffering, okay? And what what can a person do when you come face to face with the fact that the world is full of need?
Well, I mean, just get involved. Reach out and find out what organizations that you feel passionately about need. In terms of Global Orphan Foundation, we have a lot of systems in place for remote volunteers. So anything from hosting a fundraiser to make sure the kids get their school supplies, or you can sponsor a kid monthly, or sponsor our farmers, or sponsor Christmas gifts, or things like that. We have a ambassador program where you help just promote what we're doing so that we have more name recognition across the country. There are so many ways to get involved that don't include actually traveling there, because that is not something that many people are going to get to do, just because of how hard it is to get there. How it's about a 24 to 30-hour flight depending on your flight path, and you know to be honest, a lot of people don't want to go. And then those who do, there's a very real language barrier. Our kids are taught French in school, but a lot of them speak Lingala from before. And so even if you know French, it's pretty hard to communicate. So it's one of those situations where you have the benefit of seeing these kids laughing and playing and being so happy and being well fed and nourished and going to school. And it's an amazing opportunity to go there, but we do have a lot of opportunities in place if you can't do that.
My guest today, Rachel Tanner, joining us from the Global Orphan Foundation. You are listening to The Edge of Adventure. My name is Adam Asher. And the Democratic Republic of Congo, we've talked about that. But I know you guys are also working in some other locations around the world. And of course, this interview is happening in 2020. And this has been one of those very unpredictable years. And so without a doubt, you guys are facing additional challenges, right? But tell me, what's the other projects? What do the other projects look like for you guys around the globe?
Yeah, so another one that we have in the Democratic Republic of Congo still is that we help the orphanages that we come alongside to learn and implement insect farming. So we are still with those palm weevil larvae. They look like little grubs, and they're about the size of your thumb. And it is a delicacy there, and they love them. They love to eat them. And it is a huge benefit, specifically in orphanages, because there's such a high fat content that it helps the kids to absorb the nutrients of any of the other foods that they're eating. So that is one project that it hasn't been our main focus, but we still help any orphanage that wants that assistance. And then we have a program in Nicaragua that's called Campamento Mi Momento, and that program is specific to orphaned or at-risk teenage girls, young women. And that program is really about helping girls combat the culture of machismo in Nicaragua. They're taught from a young age that they are pretty much property and that they don't have a voice, or they shouldn't have goals or opinions. And so we have a 5-day camp program where we go through goal setting and how to communicate assertively but respectfully, and how to find their own opinion and their own voice.
Okay, Rachel, we're going to take a break here in a second, but when we come back, I want to hear more about that. And it's great to hear about the different aspects of what you guys do. And honestly, I've got several questions kind of racing through my mind here, but we're going to take a break. Of course, as mentioned before, The Edge of Adventure is now here on the radio. So if you're hearing us on the radio, congrats. You're getting to hear one of the very first and early programs on the radio. We've been a podcast for a while now. And since we talked about Nicaragua, I'm going to put in a shameless plug here. I did a video series, a web series on Nicaragua. And I went to Nicaragua, and it's just one of those adventure type series. If you haven't seen it, please look it up at theedgeofadventure.com. You'll click on the link there for video series and take a look about it, because take a look at it. It shares some of the wonderful things about Nicaragua, and it also shows some of the real need that's there, and some great organizations that are working there as well. So when we come back on the other side of this nice little break, we're going to get back to talking with Rachel about the Global Orphan Foundation, and we'll start hearing about the Nicaragua scenario. I want to get more into that because I think that's very, very important, helping the young ladies to really grow in their own self-esteem and their own identity and self-worth. Such a wonderful thing, and very, very important. So stick around. Rachel Tanner is our guest today from the Global Orphan Foundation, and we'll be right back in just a minute on The Edge of Adventure. Welcome back to The Edge of Adventure. My name is Adam Asher. Great to have you with us today. Thanks for joining us. Rachel Tanner is my guest today. She's the U.S. Director at the Global Orphan Foundation. And Rachel, I am enjoying getting to know the Global Orphan Foundation. The work that you guys do is making a difference, and it's very inspirational. And I like the fact that you guys deliberately go to places other people and perhaps even other NGOs or other organizations don't choose to go. Does that ever present any problem, though? I mean, let's talk about the Democratic Republic of Congo. Is it difficult sometimes, given the fact that you're going into places that are very difficult to get to and perhaps operate?
It's difficult in that a lot of people don't necessarily understand the why. When we talked earlier about how the country as a whole is more expensive, just in general, why would we choose to operate in a community where, we could be having more impact or serving more children in a different community? But that's kind of the point, that nobody wants to do that. And luckily for us, we have great donors, and our founders have committed to funding operations of the organization. So all of the program funds that are donated by other donors goes straight into our programs. So that's been one way that we've kind of worked within that difficulty. But it is just the realization that if you're there and you want to run and grab some plastic bins for like our pharmacy area in our clinic, that's something that takes half a day. You don't just run into the nearest store and grab them. And that took some getting used to as well for us.
Rachel Tanner from the Global Orphan Foundation, talking there in particular about the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now let's switch back as we talk about your work in Nicaragua. So, a very important work in a very different part of the world. Perhaps this is a need that exists in many parts of the world, but you guys are focusing there on meeting this need in Nicaragua. So tell us again what the Global Orphan Foundation does in Nicaragua with what you guys, I think, call Camp My Moment. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So Campamento Mi Momento, or Camp My Moment, is our program for at-risk and orphaned young women. And what we do is all of the things that any young woman should be learning in her formative years from like 12 to 17. We address those things. So what do you do when your friend is talking bad about you? Or what do you do when your boyfriend is pressuring you to move faster than you want to? How do you know what you want to do with your life? Like, what are all of these things that you have a voice in deciding? And just the amount of kind of basic factual information is what we focus on. There's an example of the first camp program that we oversaw. This program in general was developed in partnership with the Peace Corps in Nicaragua, and they have a program that's delivered to girls that are in family settings. And so we took their curriculum and with them kind of tailored it for our at-risk population and orphaned girls that have a different set of needs and just a different layer of it. And at that first one that we were observing, we were talking about reproductive health. And one of the girls said, well, if your boyfriend wants you to have sex, it's okay. You just have to drink coconut water after and you won't get pregnant. And all of the other girls in the group were like, yeah, my grandma told me that. That's right. That's true. And so we don't have an agenda, but we do give them factual information about how their bodies work and how to communicate effectively about what they want or what they need.
What kind of a difference does it make when a young woman's self-esteem or just her own self-respect is boosted, right? You talk about some of these places where it's tough. It's tough on everybody, but it can be particularly tough on the young women as they deal maybe with some cultural things that are working against them. What's the difference, though? What kind of a difference does it make when you guys get involved and help to bolster their sense of self-worth?
It's not even just their sense of self-worth. It's almost like their entire affect changes over the 5 days that they're there. Coming from some of the orphanage settings that these girls are coming from, they're very, they're not trusting of each other. They're not a community of young women that are powerful and like working together to get things done or to empower each other. It's everyone for themselves, and that's what they've learned through their upbringing. And so as they kind of look inward for that sense of value and that sense of power, then those walls you can see start coming down and they start interacting with each other in a kind way. And they don't just find that self-worth in themselves, but it translates to how they're interacting with the people around them.
Let's dig in now to a little bit of the why. You've talked about that. What motivates, I'm going to ask two questions. What motivates you, and what motivates the other people who serve through the Global Orphan Foundation?
Yeah,
What's the
so personally, I grew up very sheltered and very privileged. Um, my parents still live in the house that they brought me home from the hospital in, and they love each other so much. And I was always asked, where I wanted to go to college, not if, or things like that. It's always just been, what did I want to do next? And one day I realized that that's not the reality for everyone. And I happened to win the genetic lottery, and I was born into this family and this privilege. But I could have been born in DRC. I could have been born in Nicaragua, and it's not fair in my opinion that just because I happened to be born somewhere, I was set up with all of this extra privilege and all of these opportunities. So I think every child deserves a champion, and everyone should get to choose for themselves what their life is, and their circumstances shouldn't. In terms of Global Orphan Foundation, a lot of our founder, our board members, a lot of our supporters are adoptive families. And so they've seen where their children could have been brought up and the difference that they can make in children's lives besides their child. And it's really impactful to go and see that, you're taking this child home with you, and you're going to give them everything that they could need, but you can't take all of them home with you. And the Democratic Republic of Congo specifically, they have closed down adoptions. So you can't adopt from DRC right now. And so these over 4 million orphaned children are just there. And the orphanages, they're not funded by the government. And so it's all what people in the community are able to donate and to help out so that these children survive. And so I think a lot of them have seen that and know about what these kids are experiencing. And so they want them to have the same opportunities everybody else does.
I've noticed you keep mentioning the importance of sustainability in these programs. So you work there in the Democratic Republic of Congo and in these other nations around the world, doing remarkable things. And honestly, you do so much better job conveying. I mean, there's so much that you guys are doing, but these programs are sustainable. Remind us again what the programs are and how they're sustainable. What does that mean, sustainable?
Well, our two main programs are our insect farming program and Balingo Village. And how we got to insect farming is actually, the whole story is about sustainability. So when we started working with orphanages in the area of nutrition, we were taking a product called Plumpy Nut over with us on trips. And Plumpy Nut is amazing, but it was developed to be delivered in a family setting where a mom was giving it to one child that was, for some reason, malnourished. And there was a schedule involved, how often, and dosage based on how big they were. And what we found is that it was taking about 6 months longer than it was supposed to take to get kids up to a healthy weight with this product, because it's not something that in an orphanage setting, if one kid is hungry, you're going to give them Plumpy Nut and the other kid isn't going to get it. And so it wasn't working as optimally as we wanted. In addition, we knew that how that program was structured was always going to be dependent on us. It was always going to need us to bring it over. And what happens if our priorities change from our board, or if, heaven forbid, like something happened to GOF and the organization went away? We never wanted to put an orphanage in a situation where they would backslide because they've grown dependent on us facilitating a program. And so we started looking at different ways that we could address hunger. And we went through a lot of research looking at different livestock options. But because of the urban nature of Kinshasa, the area that a lot of these orphanages are in, there's just no space. So we couldn't do like traditional crops. It's all concrete. And we couldn't do livestock because there's no space for all the kids. So then we found that the UN has said that insect farming is the answer to world hunger. And we just all need to get on board with it. So we started looking at what we should be farming, and palm weevil larvae came up. So the program actually started as, it grew into us having a training and training people from the orphanage workers on how to do this. It takes about an hour a day, can be done in the little closet with shoebox size containers. And within a month, if they follow the schedule, then they'll have a crop of insects to feed the kids on an ongoing basis. And so that's kind of how we got to that sustainability piece, because it would just break our hearts to leave kids in a worse situation than we found them in if something happened to us. And that's kind of how we think of everything. Balingo Village and all of our operations, we have a Democratic Republic of Congo country director, and he's in charge of everything that happens there. And all of our workers report to him. And I would say about 50% of his job is explaining to me how my assumptions are not right because I don't understand how things work there. And it's the most valuable thing for us to have is people that we trust on the ground, and they run things there. And so as Balingo Village is growing, we opened over a year ago, but we've really taken this time to focus on our operations to make sure that, our insect farming is at a point where in the next few months we'll be able to start expanding and then selling excess palm weevil larvae, and that will, feed the kids, but then the income from the excess will pay our farmers and buy the food that we can't grow. So our goal is that if GOF goes away, if Global Orphan Foundation doesn't exist anymore, Balingo Village will be self-sustaining, and we will have the ability for that to still go on in perpetuity and help kids forever.
The founders of the organization cover the operational costs, which means then if somebody gives to you guys, it actually goes right to the bottom line of making a difference to somebody on the ground in need, right?
Absolutely. So things that are covered under that operations label are, we have our 2 employees have an office share. So if you donate to GOF, you are not covering my office or my salary or my computer that I do GOF work on, every dollar raised from donors goes straight to the kids.
Super important. And to find out more information about the Global Orphan Foundation, you can look them up online at globalorphan.org. That's globalorphan.org. But you'll also find them on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and you'll get to know them a little bit better. So pick the social media platform of your choice and look them up online and get to know them a bit more. So we're getting close here to the end of the program, Rachel, but I just want to thank you. I want to thank Global Orphan Foundation, and I want to encourage people. Let's, again, if you're watching the show, the video show, so you're actually watching it either on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, one of the other video formats of the show, you can see this on the screen, globalorphan.org, globalorphan.org. The handles for Twitter, Global Orphan FDN. That's Twitter and Instagram, Global Orphan FDN. And then you can look them up at Global Orphan Foundation over on Facebook. So you've said something a few minutes ago, and I think it's a great way to end. Define for me, you said everybody deserves a champion. That sounds great. But what's a champion, and how is Global Orphan Foundation helping people get connected with a champion?
Well, my definition of champion in terms of GOF is that you're a part of this movement to create a better world for kids. And we talk about our supporters in terms of being a part of the GOF family. And that's really how we define it. If you're a donor, if you're a volunteer, if you're hosting an event just talking about GOF, you are a champion for children, and you're part of the GOF family then. And, you have a bunch of little kids that look up to you in Africa and will send you videos waving and saying thank you. And it's a great club to be in, being a champion for children.
Thank you so much for your time today, Rachel. You're
a
delight. Great to get to know you, and through you getting to know the heart of the Global Orphan Foundation. So again, look them up online, globalorphan.org. Get to know what they're doing and get involved. Reach out to them. Let them know you heard them here on the program, and just encourage them. That would be my biggest request. Connect with them, encourage them, let them know you appreciate what they're doing. And then, yeah, of course, as is always the case, if you feel led to get involved financially and to support them in some way, you should do it, because it's really only a blessing that you'll be missing out on. So do that, get involved, and thank you all for joining the show today and always, and sharing it in social media, helping us get the word out and tell the world about the Global Orphan Foundation. And Rachel, God bless you. Thanks for your work, and thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
And again, thank you all. This has been another exciting edition of The Edge of Adventure. My name is Adam Asher, and we'll see you again next time.